Have you ever felt like the world is against you? Like no matter what you do, people's opinions, circumstances, and challenges keep pulling you down? What if I told you that the problem isn't out there, it's inside? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology and spirituality, uncovered a secret that few truly understand. Nothing and no one can affect you unless you allow it. And today, you're going to learn how to take back control. The Bible warns us about the dangers of being swayed by external forces. In James 1:8 it says, "A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways." This is exactly why most people feel lost, insecure, and easily influenced. They haven't mastered their inner world. But here's the truth. You are meant to be unshakable. Jung's teachings, combined with deep spiritual wisdom, reveal how to break free from the fear of judgment, emotional dependence, and the illusions that keep you trapped. When you understand these principles, you'll no longer be controlled by external validation, self-doubt, or the chaos of the world. You will finally stand in your true power. But before we dive in, let me ask you, have you ever caught yourself changing who you are just to fit in? If so, you need to hear what's coming next. And if you're here for the first time, make sure to subscribe. Many people watch these videos but aren't subscribed, and you don't want to miss the next revelations that could completely transform your life. So stay with me until the end, because what you'll learn today might be the key to unlocking the spiritual strength you've been searching for. There comes a moment in life when everything seems to conspire against us. People disappoint, circumstances shift, and the universe itself appears indifferent to our struggles. It's in these moments of despair that one may feel like a mere pawn in an overwhelming cosmic game. But is it truly the world that opposes you, or is it your own perception shaping this reality? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology and spirituality, teaches that what happens outside is often a mere reflection of what's within. When we internalize negativity, we unconsciously project it onto the world, believing that every challenge is a personal attack. But here's the truth. No external force can truly harm you unless you grant it permission. The mystic path reveals that nothing holds power over your soul unless you allow it. Think about Jesus in the wilderness. After fasting for 40 days, he was tempted by the enemy. Matthew 4:1-11. Satan didn't force him into submission. Instead, he tried to manipulate his perception, offering power, validation, and comfort. But Christ stood firm. He knew that true strength comes not from controlling the external world, but from mastering the internal one. Likewise, when life throws adversities at you, it's not the circumstances themselves that define your experience, but how you respond to them. Spirituality teaches that every trial holds a lesson, and the key to overcoming them lies not in resisting but in understanding. Imagine someone who constantly blames the world for their misfortunes. They believe that society, the economy, or even their past mistakes have permanently doomed them. But what if they shifted their perspective? What if, instead of seeing opposition, they saw an opportunity for transformation? Many who follow a spiritual journey come to realize that life's hardships are not meant to destroy, but to refine. The universe doesn't conspire against you. Rather, it presents you with the exact experiences needed for growth. Carl Jung speaks of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating every aspect of the self, even the painful ones. By embracing hardships instead of resenting them, one moves closer to true wisdom. But let's be real. Sometimes it truly feels like everything is falling apart. That's human. Even the greatest spiritual masters felt abandoned at times. Jesus himself, at the cross, cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Matthew 27:46. Yet in that very moment, he was fulfilling his divine mission. The same happens with us. What appears to be destruction may in fact be divine alignment. The mystical understanding of suffering is that it's often the universe nudging us toward a higher path. The trials that seem unbearable today may be the very experiences that lead to inner liberation. So, what do you do when the world feels like it's against you? First, pause, breathe, look inward. Ask yourself, is this a true opposition, or is it an invitation for growth? Start shifting your mindset from victimhood to empowerment. Understand that external circumstances have no authority over your spirit. Like a ship in a storm, the winds may rage, but it's the captain, your consciousness, that decides the course. And here's the secret. When you master your inner world, the outer world loses its grip on you. Now let's take this understanding a step further. How do you cultivate this inner mastery? That's where Jung's key principle comes in. Self-knowledge. There is a reason why the greatest sages, mystics, and spiritual teachers throughout history have emphasized one fundamental truth: know thyself. Without self-knowledge, one remains vulnerable to the chaos of the external world, drifting aimlessly through life, easily swayed by circumstances and the opinions of others. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He taught that our minds are not merely rational structures but intricate landscapes filled with hidden desires, fears, and unconscious patterns. What we don't understand about ourselves controls us, but when we shine a light on our inner world, we reclaim our power. The universe responds not to what we pretend to be, but to what we truly are at our core. Think about it. How often do people react out of emotion rather than understanding? How often do they mistake their conditioned responses for their authentic selves? Jesus himself demonstrated self-mastery through profound self-knowledge. He knew his mission, his purpose, and his identity as the Son of God. That's why no insult, betrayal, or opposition could shake him. When questioned by the Pharisees, when abandoned by his disciples, and even when facing death, he remained steadfast. His strength came not from external validation, but from the absolute certainty of who he was. This is precisely what Jung speaks of, the individuation process, the journey toward becoming, whole by integrating all aspects of the self, both light and shadow. Many resist this journey because it requires confronting uncomfortable truths. The human psyche is layered, much like an iceberg, with the vast majority of its substance hidden beneath the surface. Jung called this the shadow self, the aspects of our personality we deny, repress, or project onto others. Have you ever noticed how the traits that bother you the most in others are often the ones you struggle with internally? That's projection at work. The more one refuses to acknowledge their shadow, the more they remain enslaved by it. The spiritual path teaches that true freedom is not found in denying these hidden aspects, but in integrating them. After all, even darkness has a purpose in the grand design of the universe. The Bible reminds us of this concept in multiple ways. In Romans 7:15, Paul expresses a deep psychological struggle. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. This is the battle of every soul seeking transformation, the war between conscious intention and unconscious programming. The mystical approach to spirituality invites individuals to face this battle not with fear, but with curiosity and courage. What if, instead of avoiding pain, one sought to understand it? What if, instead of rejecting certain emotions, one asked what they were trying to reveal? These are the questions that lead to self-mastery. The path of self-knowledge is not an easy one, but it is the only path to true power. When someone deeply understands themselves, their emotions, motivations, and hidden fears, they become unshakable. They stop seeking approval because they recognize their worth. They stop fearing rejection because they no longer reject themselves. And most importantly, they stop reacting impulsively to life's difficulties because they see beyond the immediate moment. But self-knowledge is only the beginning. The next step is learning how to live in alignment with that truth, to stand firm in authenticity without being swayed by external influences. What does it truly mean to be free? Most people assume freedom is about having no restrictions, no rules, no obligations. But Carl Jung and the great spiritual masters of history would disagree. True freedom is not about escaping external constraints. It's about liberating oneself from internal ones. The chains that bind most individuals are not made of iron, but of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. The moment one seeks approval from the outside world, they hand over their power. But the moment they reclaim their own identity, the universe aligns to reflect that authenticity. This is the secret of spiritual freedom, the ability to exist fully as oneself, without the need for permission. Jesus embodied this principle perfectly. He did not conform to the expectations of the religious elite. He dined with sinners, healed on the Sabbath, and overturned the tables of money changers in the temple, Matthew 21:12-13. He was not concerned with societal approval because his mission was far greater than human validation. Yet, how often do people today live in fear of what others will think? They hide their true nature, suppress their voice, and betray themselves just to fit in. But what is the price of that illusion? The loss of inner peace. The universe, in its divine order, does not reward inauthenticity. It responds only to what is real. Jung speaks of the persona, the social mask, that individuals wear to navigate society. While it serves a function, it becomes a prison when one identifies too deeply with it. How many live not as themselves, but as a carefully constructed version designed to gain acceptance? This is where spirituality becomes a guide. To truly embrace one's soul, one must be willing to remove the mask. The journey is not about creating a new self, but about remembering who one has always been beneath the conditioning of the world. This is why so many spiritual awakenings feel like a return home, a realization that the answers were always within. Consider the words of Psalm 139:14. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Every individual is created with a unique essence, a divine imprint that no one else possesses. To live authentically is to honor that divine design. And yet, society constantly pressures people to conform. From a young age, individuals are taught to follow a script. Be polite, be agreeable, be what others expect. But spiritual growth demands the opposite. It calls for radical honesty, for the courage to be seen, for the willingness to stand alone if necessary. Because only in standing in one's truth can true connection with the universe be found. Freedom is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of authenticity. When a person stops seeking approval and starts living according to their own principles, something miraculous happens. They find peace, no longer bound by the opinions of others. They walk through life with confidence, knowing that their worth is not determined by external forces. And this is where the journey deepens. Once one no longer seeks validation from the world, they must also break free from the illusion of needing validation at all. But that requires a deeper transformation, the severing of emotional dependence on external approval. How many people live their entire lives trapped in an invisible cage, built not of iron bars, but of expectations? The need for approval is one of the most powerful and insidious forms of bondage. Carl Jung understood this well. He recognized that society molds individuals through unspoken rules, rewarding conformity and punishing authenticity. From childhood, people are conditioned to seek validation, good grades for approval, social acceptance for self-worth, applause for a sense of significance. But what happens when this validation is withdrawn? For many, their entire sense of identity crumbles. And that is the danger. When one's self-worth is tied to the opinions of others, they become prisoners of external circumstances. Jesus himself never sought validation from the world. If he had, his mission would have failed before it even began. The Pharisees, the religious leaders, the crowds, they all had their own expectations of him. They wanted a Messiah who would fit their mold. But Jesus did not come to please men. He came to fulfill divine purpose. I do not accept glory from human beings. John 5:41. That single statement holds immense spiritual power. It is a reminder that true strength comes from within, not from the shifting opinions of others. And yet, how many today fall into the exact trap Jesus warned against, seeking likes, approval, and applause, never realizing that these things are fleeting illusions? Jung speaks of the collective unconscious, the inherited beliefs and societal norms that shape human behavior. Many people live not by their own convictions, but by what they have been taught to value. They fear rejection more than they fear living a meaningless life. But spirituality demands a different perspective. What if the very rejection one fears is actually the door to liberation? What if being misunderstood is the price of true authenticity? When a person stops living for the approval of others, they begin living for themselves, and that is when the universe starts aligning with their purpose. Consider the words of Galatians 1:10. Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. The spiritual journey is not about fitting in, it is about transcending the need to fit in at all. Imagine a life where no external opinion had the power to shake your inner peace, where you could move forward with confidence, regardless of whether others applauded or criticized. That is the life of someone who has broken free from the need for a validation. And the truth is, the moment one stops seeking approval, they become far more powerful than those who depend on it. But breaking free from this prison is not an easy process. It requires deep introspection, a willingness to sit with discomfort, and the courage to stand alone if necessary. The mystics and sages of history knew this well. Spiritual awakening often comes with solitude, because few are willing to detach from societal conditioning. Yet, the reward is unparalleled. When someone no longer depends on external validation, they gain something far greater, the ability to validate themselves. And that leads to the next stage of transformation, the power of self-validation, where one no longer waits for the world to grant them permission to be whole. In a world that constantly demands proof of worthiness, few realize that the greatest validation does not come from external sources. It comes from within. Carl Jung understood that the search for approval is, at its core, a search for self-acceptance projected outward. People seek recognition, applause, and validation because they secretly doubt their own value. But here's the truth. No amount of external validation will ever be enough if a person does not first validate themselves. It is only when someone acknowledges their own worth, independent of praise or criticism, that they become truly free. The universe responds not to those who wait for approval, but to those who already know they are enough. Jesus demonstrated this principle throughout his life. He did not need the approval of the religious elite, nor did he seek affirmation from the crowds. When questioned, when doubted, even when betrayed, he remained unwavering. His identity was not something given to him by others. It was something he carried within himself. In Luke 4:18-19, he boldly declared his purpose, reading from the scriptures, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor." He did not wait for permission to fulfill his mission. He knew who he was. And that is the power of self-validation, the ability to move forward without needing anyone else to agree with your path. Jung speaks of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all aspects of the self. This includes not only strengths, but also perceived weaknesses. Many struggle with self-validation because they have been taught to measure their worth based on achievements, appearance, or societal standards. But what if true self-worth had nothing to do with any of these things? What if a person's value was inherent, woven into their very existence? This is the shift that occurs when one embraces self-validation. No longer waiting for external approval, they recognize their worth as absolute, unshaken by circumstance. The Bible reinforces this in Psalm 139:14. "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." Imagine what would happen if every individual truly embodied this truth. If instead of seeking approval, they lived as if they already possessed it. How different would their decisions be? How much more boldly would they move through life? The need for validation is a form of control. Whoever controls your sense of worth controls you. But when self-validation takes root, that control is severed. One no longer reacts to the praise or rejection of others because their foundation is internal, not external. But self-validation is more than just a mindset. It is a practice. It requires conscious effort, daily reaffirmation, and a commitment to seeing oneself through the lens of truth rather than fear. It means speaking life into oneself, standing firm in convictions, and refusing to shrink for the comfort of others. And here's the paradox. The moment one stops seeking validation, they often receive more of it than ever before. Why? Because the universe rewards authenticity. But at that point, validation becomes irrelevant. The next level is even deeper, the shedding of all masks, the complete alignment with one's essence. This is where the masks of societal conditioning must be removed, leading to the next stage, the courage to live without masks. Since childhood, people are taught how to behave, what to say, and who to be in order to fit into society's mold. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask one wears to navigate the world. While it serves a purpose, it becomes a prison when one forgets that the mask is not their true self. How many live their entire lives playing a role, afraid to reveal their authentic essence? The fear of rejection, of not being accepted, keeps people trapped in illusions, disconnected from their true spiritual identity. But here's the truth. The more one wears a mask, the further they drift from their soul. The universe does not respond to the false self. It responds only to what is real. Jesus was the ultimate example of authenticity. He never altered his message to please the crowds or to fit societal expectations. He spoke truth, even when it made others uncomfortable. In John 8:32, he declared, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." What truth was he referring to? Not just the truth of his teachings, but the truth of the self. To live authentically is to walk in spiritual freedom. It means breaking free from the need to perform, to impress, to conform. And yet, so many resist this path because authenticity comes with a cost. It requires shedding illusions, and that can be terrifying. Jung understood that authenticity is not about rejecting society, but about integrating one's true nature into it. People wear masks because they believe they must be something other than themselves to be accepted. But spirituality teaches the opposite. The universe does not reward those who conform. It blesses those who embrace their divine design. Think of Moses. When called by God, he initially resisted, saying he was not eloquent enough. Exodus 4:10. But God did not ask him to become someone else. He asked him to step into his true role. The same applies to everyone. The moment one stops pretending and starts owning who they truly are, doors open that were once invisible. Yet, removing the mask is not easy. It requires facing the fear of rejection, the discomfort of vulnerability. But what is the alternative? A lifetime of suppression? A life lived for the approval of others rather than for one's own spiritual path? The universe whispers to those who dare to be real, guiding them toward people and experiences that align with their truth. When one stops pretending, they attract what is meant for them. They walk lighter, speak freer, live fuller. And the most beautiful paradox? The moment one embraces their true self, they stop fearing rejection, because they no longer seek validation from those who cannot see their worth. But authenticity is not just about self-expression. It is about resilience. It is about standing firm, even when the world does not understand. Many fear that if they show their real selves, they will lose relationships, opportunities, acceptance. But what if the opposite is true? What if authenticity is the gateway to real connection, to alignment, to fulfillment? This is where spiritual strength is forged, because when one fully embraces who they are no longer shaken by external forces. And this leads to the next crucial realization, the ability to transform adversity into growth. What if every hardship you faced wasn't meant to break you, but to build you? Carl Jung believed that true transformation happens not in comfort, but in confrontation, with oneself, with life's challenges, with the unknown. Most people view adversity as an enemy, something to escape or avoid. But spirituality reveals a deeper truth. The struggles one endures are often the very catalysts for their greatest growth. The universe does not conspire to harm, it refines. Just as gold is purified through fire, the soul evolves through trials. The question is not whether adversity will come, but how one will respond when it does. Jesus taught this through his own life. From the moment of his birth, opposition followed him. He was rejected, betrayed, and crucified. Yet, he never saw suffering as a curse. He saw it as part of the divine plan. In John 16:33, he tells his disciples, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." He didn't promise a life without struggle. He promised victory through it. This is the essence of resilience, not avoiding difficulty but learning how to transcend it. What if, instead of resisting challenges, one leaned into them, asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" The moment adversity is seen as a teacher, it loses its power to control. Jung spoke of shadow integration, the process of facing one's inner darkness rather than suppressing it. Many suffer not because of external events, but because they refuse to confront their own emotions. Pain, fear, and failure are not the real enemies. Avoidance is. Spirituality teaches that everything has purpose, even suffering. Joseph, in the Bible, is a perfect example. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, imprisoned for years. He had every reason to be bitter. Yet in Genesis 50:20 he tells them, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." His hardships were not obstacles. They were stepping stones to his destiny. The same is true for every individual. willing to see beyond the immediate struggle. But resilience is not just about enduring. It is about transforming. It is the ability to take pain and turn it into wisdom, to take failure and turn it into fuel. Consider this. What if every setback was secretly a setup for something greater? The universe has a way of rerouting those who refuse to give up. Many who have walked a mystical path understand this deeply. Resistance is not rejection. It is redirection. What seems like an ending is often a beginning disguised. That relationship that ended, that job that was lost, that dream that seemed to shatter. What if they were clearing space for something beyond imagination? And here's the final truth. Resilience is a choice. It is not about waiting for life to get easier, but about becoming stronger. The storm will come, but those who anchor themselves in spiritual wisdom will not be moved. The universe favors those who persist, not with stubbornness, but with faith. And when resilience is fully embraced, something profound happens. Nothing can truly shake the core of one's being. This is the ultimate mastery, the place where external circumstances lose their grip. But how does one reach this state? That's where the final revelation unfolds. The power of becoming the master of one's own life. What if nothing outside of you had the power to control you? No words, no events, no setbacks, just unshakable inner strength. Carl Jung believed that true mastery begins within, not by controlling the external world, but by mastering one's response to it. Most people live in reaction mode, allowing circumstances, opinions, and emotions to dictate their state of being. But spiritual wisdom reveals a higher path, the ability to remain centered no matter what happens. The universe does not ask for blind submission to fate. It invites conscious participation in creation. Those who step into this awareness stop waiting for life to change and start becoming the change itself. Jesus exemplified this kind of mastery. He did not live at the mercy of external events. He walked with purpose, unaffected by distractions. When storms arose, he calmed them. Mark 4:39. When enemies plotted against him, he remained composed. Even in his final moments, he chose forgiveness over resentment. That is true power, the ability to remain sovereign over one's own being, regardless of what unfolds externally. This is not about ignoring emotions or pretending struggles don't exist. It is about owning them, understanding them, and choosing how to respond. The moment one realizes they are not their thoughts, not their fears, not their past, but something far greater, they step into true mastery. Jung's concept of individuation speaks directly to this process. To master life, one must first master oneself. This means understanding not only strengths, but also weaknesses. It means becoming aware of unconscious patterns and shifting them into conscious choices. Many live as prisoners of their own conditioning, repeating cycles without realizing they hold the key to break free. But the mystical path teaches that transformation is always possible. In Romans 12:2 it is written, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Mastery begins with a shift in perspective, a realization that nothing outside of you has power unless you allow it. Imagine living without fear of failure, without attachment to approval, without anxiety over the future. This is not a distant ideal. It is the natural result of inner alignment. When one fully embraces their spiritual essence, they move through life with a quiet confidence. They are no longer easily offended, no longer easily shaken. They do not chase, they attract. This is not about detachment from the world, but about engaging with it from a place of sovereignty. The great paradox is that the less one tries to control, the more powerful they become. The universe bends to those who do, not bend to fear. But mastery is not a final destination. It is a practice. It is a daily commitment to choosing wisdom over reaction, faith over doubt, purpose over distraction. And here's the final revelation. The power to transform life has always been within. No guru, no external force, no validation is needed, only the willingness to step into one's full potential. The question is not whether mastery is possible. The question is, will you choose it? Now that you know the truth, nothing can truly affect you unless you allow it. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue seeking validation, living in fear of judgment, and letting circumstances dictate your emotions? Or will you step into your power, break free from these illusions, and become the master of your own life? The choice is yours, but I want to hear from you. Which part of this message spoke to you the most? Have you ever struggled with external validation, or felt like the world was against you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Your journey matters, and your insights might help someone else who's searching for answers. And if you found this message powerful, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. This way, you won't miss the next revelation that could take your spiritual growth even further. Also, check out the next video on the screen. It dives even deeper into the wisdom that will set you free. This is Celestial Truths, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay strong, stay true, and never forget, your power comes from within.